friends, go live a button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, got to make sure those tubes are working. And it looks like they are. We're on the tubes, we're on the Rumble, we're on the locals, we're on the X. That's tremendous. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about the Trump trials. We've got Big Fanny over there in Georgia who has filed an emergency request. This comes on the heels of a leak. We got a leak out of Fanny's office. Some might call it Leaky Fanny, but I'm not going to call it that. But Jenna Ellis apparently gave a proffer. We're familiar with this, but she sat down with them, and ABC News got their hands on about 50 seconds or so of this exchange, and we're going to listen to it because Jenna Ellis, former Trump attorney who was highly involved in the 2020 election challenges, has taken a guilty plea for a diversion deal is going to result in a dismissal of the guilty plea. Okay, so just to be clear, as long as she continues on this path, all of her charges are going to be dismissed. There will be no conviction for her. So just to be clear on that. Now, she does have this interesting statement here that got leaked saying that Dan Scavino, who is this guy, you may be familiar with him, is a senior advisor to Donald Trump, saying that he said that they're not leaving and that's like, hearsay on hearsay. Trump said it to Dan. Dan said it to her. She's saying it now in this hearing. Like, oh my gosh. So we're going to hear what she says. We're going to check in with Julie Kelly. She says, yeah, Jenna Ellis wasn't so upset about Dan Scavino and his plan when she got paid a lot of money from him. And then, of course, Jenna Ellis had apparently an interesting tweet at the time, right after that conversation with Dan Scavino. So we'll talk about all of that and more. There was also a leak of Sidney Powell. She's explaining the scene, said Rudy Giuliani was very mean to her, and I don't condone that behavior. But she said that it was a little bit, prickly in there in the relationship in the aftermath of 2020. We'll hear what she had to say about it. And then Adam Schiff showed up on his favorite show, Inside Jen Psaki, and they were having a conversation about Trump as usual. And Schiff said that we've never heard those words from a president in American history. And it's like, well, yeah, we didn't hear them from Trump either. It's like Jenna Ellis said that they came from Dan Scavino, who said that they came from Trump. Okay, all right. So we're going to listen to some of that. But then the big news is that Fanny has issued a request for an emergency hearing, right? She wants a protective order to stop the leaks. Fanny's leaky office is, leaking all over the place, and we want to limit that because we don't want any more of these videos coming out. And the big question is, who was behind the leaks? Like, where did these leaks come from? Because Fanny's going to say they came from Harrison Floyd. Harrison Floyd is another co-defendant there who has entered a plea of not guilty and is contesting this thing. And he said that he didn't do it. And so, they're all pointing fingers at, where these leaks come from. Where did it come from? But there will be a hearing tomorrow, and so we'll definitely get up to speed on this. Fanny's asking for a protective order. We'll see whether or not the judge grants it as the hearing in Georgia unfolds. So we'll get all through that in the first segment and see what is happening there. Then we're going to turn our attention to what's happening out of the Court of Appeals, out of the D.C. Circuit, Washington, D.C. We know that Donald Trump has been gagged by Judge Chutkan, and Judge Chutkan and Jack Smith, they really don't want Trump talking about this stuff because he's very effective calling out their corruption and their tyrannical behavior, and they don't like that. So they tried to gag him. Donald Trump appealed the gag. The gag has been administratively stayed, but now we're getting scheduled for oral arguments on this, I think actually in 6 days from now. I'm not positive about that, but I think it's like soon, the 20th. And Trump has already filed his appellate opening brief, which we reviewed here. This is Jack Smith's appeal answer. So he's responding to Trump's opening brief. We'll read through it. And then we've got a clip from Speaker Johnson who's saying, I think Trump believes in the rule of law and he'll be essentially supporting him if and when, more likely when, he becomes the nominee. Then we'll turn our attention over to what's happening in New York because there is a trial taking place there. Of course, this photograph. This is Judge Engoron looking at Allison there, his Greenfield. Hey, Allison, doing a great job in my courtroom. Yeah, stamp those documents. So Letitia is the New York Attorney General prosecutor who's, not really doing much prosecuting. She's kind of doing a lot of talking and sitting. But she had a statement In the aftermath of yesterday, we know we're in the middle of week 7 of this trial. It's like, oh gosh. And they brought back Don Jr. And after the trial, he came out and gave a statement to the media. So we'll catch up and see what he said. She came out and said Don Jr. was a failure on the stand. And Don Jr. said, you know, it's actually pretty boring, but it's pretty scary for other people that they could be under attack like this. Then we'll jump over and see what these transcripts look like from our friend Adam Klasfeld over on the X platform at Klasfeld Reports. And then Weissman is saying Trump's attacking the judicial system. All right, so we'll hear what he has to say about it too. And so, as you can see, my friends, we got a lot to get to today. We are so grateful that you are here and with us. We love attending to business together with you, and this is a lot. So we'll go through it. We also had a great member stream this morning, and so as always, we invite you to join us, become a member. We do members-only streams in the morning. We already had a great stream this morning talking about all sorts of other things. And so we'd love to see you, join us. We also do after parties at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where you can stick around after the show. We hang out, debrief, take some member-only comments, hang out, get to know one another, and kind of let the hair down, as it were. So come check it out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and join us for our morning streams. Join us for our Saturday streams, where we talk about some other things, other topics, other politics, what's going on in California, Newsom, and so on. And so we also have our website, robertgovea.com, which is where you head on over, sign up for the daily newsletter. This is the home page. And sign up here. You can get the daily show reports delivered to your inbox automatically. You don't have to think about it. So all this stuff will just get delivered right there. And when there are documents on the screen, you can go here and find them on the site. So we'll put them here. And for example, you can see Judge Cannon, and hopefully we got some documents right there. All the red lines, right, are there. You can get them at robertgovea.com so you can attend to the PDFs. Now, without any further ado, let's get right to it, because we've got an emergency hearing request, and the hearing has been granted. So we'll hear more about this soon. Big Fanny requests an emergency hearing because some of those videos leaked out of her office, including Sidney Powell. She was explaining the scene and how Rudy Giuliani was treating her and the aftermath of the 2020 election. But the big one is Jenna Ellis, and she said that Dan Scavino, Trump's social media advisor, this guy with 1.7 million followers on X, 2020 advisor, 2024 presidential advisor, former assistant to POTUS, deputy chief of staff, and so on. Jenna Ellis says that Dan Scavino told her Trump's not leaving. The boss is not leaving. And so people are very excited about this on the left. They're saying, oh, this is perfect evidence of Trump insurrecting America. Guys like Adam Schiff are saying, we've never heard those words from an American president before. We should do something about it, like, I guess, indict him again. But we're going to go through it because there are some, alternative takes here. It's like, what's Jenna Ellis doing? Is she trustworthy? Is she reliable? Is she somebody that has a pattern of credibility in this type of case? Well, you can be the judge. But this is what the scene sounded like. Now, we're going to ultimately jump into an emergency order. So Fanny is trying to stop these videos from leaking. And she's going to say that the videos came out from Harrison Floyd, another person who was a co-defendant in this case. The other guy who took a mugshot, actually, he was held in custody for some time. And then they gave him the mugshot. And of course, he's been fighting this case hard. But Fanny wants now a protective order to stop any more leaks coming out, because we know we got Kenneth Chesebro, who also took a guilty plea. That's ultimately going to be dismissed, by the way. They all took diversion deals, so they will not have any convictions as long as they comply with the terms of their deal. But the long story short is, now, would other, maybe co-defendants, would other people want to take plea deals if they know that their documents and these proffers, these videos are going to be leaked out for everybody to see? Maybe they won't want to take a deal because maybe they'll be criticized or condemned for some of these things, right? That's the theory. And so here is what it looked like. Now, this came out from Jenna Ellis, and this is her conversation. It didn't come from her. It came from ABC News, got the leak, but this was from her conversation with Georgia prosecutors, the Big Fanny team.
And at the time period where they were going to start to discuss, what was Dan Scavino's role?
At the time, I believe his title was social media director for the White House. It became deputy chief of staff at the time that the conversation in question took place.
Okay, and when was that?
The conversation was around December 19th of 2020 at the White House Christmas party.
Okay, White House Christmas party is where the conversation was. What are you doing at a Christmas party? Everybody's on high energy. Okay, there probably wasn't cocaine at the White House back then, but you never know. People are on high energy, right? It's a Christmas party. People are drinking, people are eating, people are dancing, people are having fun. So people are talking loudly. People are misinterpreting things, okay? And it's December 19th, so we're going to put a pin in that date because she made some comments after that date, and we'll see if those comments that came after that date are in alignment with the comments that she makes here.
And I emphasized to him, I thought that the claims and the ability to challenge the election results was essentially over, because he said to me in a kind of excited tone,
so that was an interesting cut there from ABC.
Well, we don't care and we're not going to leave. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the boss, meaning President Trump, and everyone understood the boss, that's what we all called him. He said the boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We are just going to stay in power. And I said to him, well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize. And he said, we don't care.
Yeah. Sounds like a regular Christmas conversation, you know, around a holiday party. It's like, yeah, you know, we're not leaving. Yeah, I mean, first of all, have you tried these crab cakes? They're incredible. Yeah, we'll take some more of those over here. Bring those back over here. Amazing. Yeah, anyways, we're staying here in the White House, okay? We love it, right? Are you kidding me? This food's great. We love these parties. We're not going anywhere. Are you kidding me? We got Valentine's Day coming up next year, and then we're going to stick it out through the summer, and so we're not going anywhere. Jenna, and she's like, oh, you're insurrecting the whole world? And, you know, it's a Christmas party. But here's Jenna. And you can even see this freeze frame on her face. She's like, she's very satisfied with herself. Yeah. Okay. So again, did Trump tell you that, Jenna? Or was this Dan Scavino at a Christmas party? And did he say, like, we're going to violate the law to stay here? Or could it be that we're staying here because we're going to be successful in proving that this election was rigged? You know, many ways to interpret this, but this reads to me like somebody who's just trying to save their own skin. They're having this like fake conversation with each other. Yeah, totally. Love Starbucks. I'd love a double extra latte. Put some extra creamer in there for me. You know what I'm saying? And you know, they have this conversation, and that's her. Now, the video, I don't know if she was expecting this to be leaked. She should have. I mean, obviously, this is a case involving national importance, and you've got a lot of self-interested people in there who want to point fingers at one another, but that's Jenna. Now, what's curious about all this is that Jenna, after that date, okay, Laura Loomer posted this one. She dug back through Jenna Ellis's X account, and she said the following on 12/28, which is 9 days after apparently that Christmas party where Dan Scavino was telling her, we're insurrecting the country. We're not leaving. Don't let them touch your crab cakes, all right, or whatever they're having, your pumpkin pie. So here on 12/28/2020, she says President Trump should never concede the election, which, I don't know, some people might say is insurrectionary language. If you concede the election, doesn't that mean you move? If you don't concede the election, then doesn't that mean you stay because you haven't lost, because you're the victor? Like, what are you saying, Jenna? So it seems like maybe your statement that you were sitting there like, you know, Miss Hall Monitor, no, Dan, I don't care if we're at a Christmas party. We're not staying. You understand, that's not how the Supreme Court sets it up. No, Jenna, did you file a brief there at the middle of your Christmas party? No, I doubt it. And so what happened instead is, I'm guessing, she's filling in the blanks. You know, no. I always believed that the election, you know, we file a couple challenges and then we come to the point there would be a conclusory moment where we'd have to say enough, we've lost our efforts, and just kind of, you know, accept the defeat. But don't think that that really, you know, ever happened. And what's also interesting about this is our friend Julie Kelly, who you can follow over at Julie_Kelly2 on the X platform, or who you can follow at declassified.live. She's got an excellent Substack that I highly recommend. I subscribe to it, and she does some fun stuff. But Jenna, she said, oh yeah, you know, she went back through Jenna Ellis's depo transcript, and she said this. Jenna Ellis was so horrified at Trump-Scavino plan to stay in power, as she just said, you can't do that, or you know that doesn't work, I'm a lawyer, that she apparently tricked them into believing that she was on their side by charging 6 figures, including invoices for December 2020 and January 2021. So, I mean, obviously you want to get paid for that, right? Like, if you're on the payroll, you definitely want to get paid. So she apparently did. Now, I don't know ultimately what the monies look like, but here is what Julie Kelly clipped for us, saying that this came from her depo. So Jenna gets asked a question. Hey, Jenna, you're here for a depo. According to public FEC reports on disbursements by the Trump campaign, so stuff that's public record, and an associated political action committee. It says you received a total of $138,000 for the 2020 election cycle. Is that correct? 100 grand, 130 grand? Which, I mean, she worked her butt off on in 2020. I mean, she was flying all over the place, hanging out with Rudy Giuliani and all that stuff. I mean, there was all, you know, well, that's, you know, it's a lot. She was doing a lot of work. She's a lawyer, charged a lot. Okay. But is that correct? She says, pursuant to advice of counsel, I will invoke my constitutionally protected right to assert the Fifth Amendment. Good call. Another clip. Okay. So this looks to be a document that you produced in response to a subpoena question for Jenna that appears to be an invoice submitted by you, Jenna Ellis, to your client, Donald J. Trump for President, Inc. And this says that it reflects services performed in December 2020, which is when she had that horrifying conversation with Dan, and January 2021. Oh man, she billed him for the month afterwards. An invoice for a total of $22,500. Nice couple months. Jenna, did you receive payment on this invoice from the Trump campaign? Did you get paid to participate in this insurrectionary behavior, Jenna? Pursuant to the advice of counsel, I will invoke my constitutionally protected right to assert the Fifth Amendment. All right. So we get what's going on here. All right. When you're not under criminal indictment, it's very easy to get paid. Then when you're under criminal indictment, you change your tune a little bit. No. I had no involvement in any of that. Now, we wanted to see what Dan Scavino said about this. Of course, did he have a response to this? And I checked this earlier, and there was not a response. Let's see if there is now. And it looks like the answer is no. So, as you can see, haven't seen anything from him. Last thing he posted was on the 12th, 2 days ago from the recording. And that was when it looks like he was at Fight Night hanging out with Dana White and some other pretty interesting and amazing people there. But no comment from him. So we'll see if he, disputes that or what his position is on it. But we have another clip because this also leaked. And of course, we're going to get to the emergency order. Fannie wants to stop the leaks out of her office. Very leaky there. And this is Sidney Powell. Now she's explaining the scene. We'll check in with Shifty and see what he has to say about it. But this is Sidney explaining in a little bit of a longer clip what's happening. Now, again, I want to point out this also, by the way. So this is 2 minutes and 14 seconds, which is a little bit longer than the Jenna Ellis clip. As we saw, Jenna Ellis was a little bit shorter. And I don't know if this is, the worst of it or if ABC has more. So is this the complete, or they're going to be drip, drip, drips? Are they going to keep dropping this stuff off, for the rest of the week? And Jenna's going to just, have more and more clips that are going to be more damning for Trump? Maybe it's not Dan. Maybe she says, and then Trump instructed me, to do this. And then Trump instructed me to do that. And so on. Or is this it? Is this the 59-second banger? Wow, this is a drop. And if it is, that's pretty bad. If this is all they spent all this time, charged her with 7 felonies, and they get this little 59-second soundbite. So I'm hoping there's a lot more to this, right? I mean, I'm not hoping that, but they better have a lot more than this. Then, Fannie's going to protect it all and lock it down. Or is this it? Is this the big thing? All right, let's see, because we're going to go and hear from Sidney Powell, and I have the same commentary there. Is there a drip, drip, drip of this? Or is this the big climactic event? Is this the big reveal? You can be the judge of how damning it is.
There was a big shouting match in which Rudy called me every name in the book, and I was the worst lawyer he'd ever seen in his life. There were no circumstances under which he'd work with me on anything. He called me a bitch and I don't know what all. And that's pretty much all I remember about that one. Did I know anything about election law? No. But I understand fraud from having been a prosecutor for 10 years.
What was President Trump's sense of what you would do as special counsel?
I guess he assumed, and I would have thought that I would have looked at putting into effect a provision of 13848 that would have allowed the machines to be secured in 4 or 5 states.
How did you choose which states that you would target?
How would I have chosen that? By the ones where there were the most statistical anomalies.
Ms. Powell, were you ever around when anyone told Donald Trump that he had lost the election?
Okay, so up until now, like pretty meaningless. Okay, yes, Rudy and Sidney had a screaming match, and I don't condone that, by the way. I think it's, you know, not really appropriate. It's not really productive at all to start screaming at people, but you get the point, right? Tensions are hot. Everybody filing motions. It's kind of madness, and we watched this in real time. Like, it was extremely high pressure. We were even looking at Sidney Powell's filings, and we're like, what? Some of these are just really wonked out, right? Some of them were kind of bad, but we gave her some grace on the fact because she was deadlines all over the place. Like, deadline here, 7 days. Deadline here, 4 days. District court judge ordered this one. You know, the end of the campaign was, it was over, and they have really compressed timelines by which the filings have to be done because it's set by statute, like literally. So we gave her a little bit of grace there, but you know, that conversation, the fact that she, you know, doesn't know much about election law, you know, all of those things, that's not criminal. You can hire lawyers who aren't necessarily experienced, and sometimes that doesn't matter, right? Sometimes you can have a brilliant lawyer who just comes in, solves a problem because they can think clearly, and law operates mostly logically. So none of that is problematic, but what is, and again, is that the spiciness? Is that the big reveal? Who cares? So now we're asking about Trump's conduct and whether Trump is, you know, coordinating this RICO type of attack on the country. And this is where we hear her.
Yeah.
Who?
Pat Cipollone, Eric Hirschman, Derek Lyons all thought he'd lost.
Was that in the December 18th meeting?
Yes.
What was President Trump's reaction when, I guess, this cadre of advisors would say you lost?
It was like, well, they would say that and then they'd walk out and he'd go, see, this is what I deal with all the time. He was specifically willing to appoint me special counsel. In fact, he looked over at Cipollone 3 different times and said, do I have the authority to name her special counsel?
And by the way, he's allowed to disagree with his advisors. Okay, there were other advisors who said, yeah, we think you got a pretty good shake here. This is rigged, this is rigged. CIA covered this up, and, you know, election things here. And there were so many problems that, looking in hindsight, it's like, oh, obviously they censored us. They manufactured stories. They suppressed the Hunter Biden story. They changed election rules. They, you know, modified ballot requirements, the whole thing. I mean, it was just wild. So the president, that's normal, normally has that. Hey, should we invade this country? You got the Nikki Haley crowd comes in. Yes, definitely. Then you've got the other side, you know, of other people, maybe on the Trump side, who say, how about not? How about we don't invade all of these countries and, you know, start these global wars? That's normal. Just because you have like even 9 of them, 9 people coming in and say you lost, and 1 guy saying you didn't. Well, turns out, in my opinion, that 1 guy was right? All those 9 other people, they just wanted Trump out of there. They were telling them what the establishment had concluded. And maybe had we gotten to the bottom of what actually happened at the election and actually counted, you know, Ted Cruz called for just a pause to actually investigate this a little bit further. They couldn't allow that to happen. Are you kidding me? That's why January 6th was just perfect.
And Cipollone said, yes, you do. And then somebody said, well, she doesn't have a security clearance. So he looked at Cipollone and he said, do I have the authority to give her a security clearance? And Cipollone said, yes, you do. And then about the 3rd time we went through that scenario, Cipollone, I think, said, you can name her anything you want, Mr. President, and nobody's going to pay a bit of attention to it.
Right, that's the point. And there was no legitimacy anymore, right? Trump could have done anything, and everybody was just, you lost, bro, you lost, bro, you lost, bro. And so it was this coordinated effort to really, you know, push him aside and push him out. But I didn't hear anything criminal in there. Okay, it says that advisors told him that you lost. Okay, who cares? There's a lot of advisors who are morons all over the place. In fact, I think those guys were wrong. So again, not a huge reveal. Is there going to be more that comes out that's going to suddenly shatter the evidence from their proffer? Right? We've been hearing this, and you know, I'm not a fan that they had to plead guilty. Like, this is a show trial, but understand, their guilty pleas will be torn up. They'll be gone. Right? And these proffers are really going to be the only thing that are, you know, memorialized now that they've been leaked. And so Fani is trying to stop these from leaking out, right? She's filing an emergency protective order to stop these leaks from coming out. Now, I don't know if she wants these leaks to come out because this is helpful to her case, but these aren't really helpful clips. I mean, like, you know, it's just kind of like, okay, it's Scavino told Jenna something that Trump maybe said. All right. You're going to bring, that's going to be the testimony at trial? All right. And then Sidney explains the scene. There was some backroom shenanigans, fights with Rudy Giuliani. Who cares? So here's Schiff, right? They just need a talking point, and they need to go on the various cable shows to spread their narrative, to spread the talking points. And so Schiff, as per usual, dutifully shows up to his favorite show called Inside Jen Psaki and explained what his take is on the Jenna tapes.
So, Congressman, I think it's safe to say that Jenna Ellis wasn't exactly coming in her deposition with the January 6th committee. If I were you, that would be very maddening. But now she says she was told that Trump would not leave the White House under any circumstances. How do you think prosecutors will use that testimony?
Well, I think they will use it very powerfully. And I have to say, it just shocks you to listen to that testimony, even though we knew Donald Trump engaged in this multi-pronged effort to overturn the election.
Okay, that was a non-answer. How are they going to use that testimony? Probably not, really, because unless they get Dan Scavino to come in and testify, and he says that Trump told him that, then it's, and they're not even charging Trump with insurrection or anything like that. So what is it going to go prove? We'll see. But he kind of just jumps right over the question, as you can tell.
Involving pressure campaigns against state legislators, involving a fake elector plot, and ultimately the violence on January 6th. But to hear in such cold-blooded terms that the boss, Donald Trump, isn't going to leave. It doesn't matter that there's no legal basis to stay. He isn't going to leave. We have never heard those words from a president of the United States in our history.
We still haven't heard it. Nobody heard it from Trump. It's like third hand. Trump to Dan to Jenna in a politicized criminal prosecution brought by Fani Willis that's going after her political opponents. Like, you think this is a reliable statement? We haven't heard it from Trump. Adam. By the way, he got censured, in case you forgot. I always, forget about a reminder here. What an embarrassment. This guy got censured by Congress. Total loser.
Many others went for re-election and lost. They have never tried to cling to power. They have never said the election doesn't matter. I'm not leaving until Donald Trump. I think that's going to be very powerful testimony. It shows why this investigation in Georgia and these plea agreements are going to produce some really powerful evidence.
I don't know. I don't think so. We'll see. Now, she's going to come in and say Dan Scavino said that, and I don't know what Dan Scavino is going to say or what Trump's going to say, right? It turns out they left. They packed up. They left. They all left. There are a lot of bits of evidence to show that they didn't actually do that. So it's like locker room talk. It's just a bunch of bravado, and that's going to be your claim. They left. All right. So Schiff is very, animated about that because he just likes anything he can latch onto on his favorite show. But this is what Fani says. She wants to stop this leakiness coming out of her office. It's unacceptable for her to be so leaky. But this is what they filed. It's an emergency order filed out of the Superior Court, Fulton County, state of Georgia, versus Donald Trump. We got here Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Meadows, Chesebro, Clark, Ellis, Smith, Cheeley, Roman, Schaefer, Tresher, Lee, Prescott, Floyd, Cootie, Catherine, Sidney Powell, Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton. Now, one name I did not see on that list, if you'll notice, is Scavino. Did you see that? Didn't see Scavino on there. So if this is a giant RICO case and Jenna Ellis is involved in it, where is Scavino? Has he not been charged? Don't see it there. Anyways, here's Fani. Now, she says, State of Georgia comes through Big Fani, and on an emergency basis, we renew our prior request that this court enter a protective order. We've already asked you, Judge, to protect this stuff over all discovery materials produced by the state, by Fani's office, to any defendant in this matter, in order to protect witnesses and to safeguard sensitive and confidential information. Now, such information includes, but is not limited to, statements of witnesses, personal identifying information of witnesses, confidential communications, confidential business records, documents obtained under seal, records from outside government agencies, and grand jury materials. We want all of this protected, right? A force field around all this discovery so nobody can see it. In support of this motion, here's what Fannie's office says. On September 27th, earlier this year, the government, Fannie, filed an underlying motion for protective order. We'll take a look at it. And she filed it back in September. She said, Your Honor, we need a protective order over the discovery materials. Now, she says, this court, Judge, your fault. You have neither ordered a hearing on our motion nor entered the requested order. But we've nevertheless complied with all the discovery deadlines. She says, in its motion that we submitted in January, the state emphasized the need for a protective order, stating that the court that the public release of information contained within discovery could subject witnesses to harassments and threats prior to trial, which could discourage cooperation and candor. Premature public discussions or release of information, they say, quote, could also affect the jury pool. So they're getting a little nervous here, right? Maybe people are seeing, hey, like these other plea deals that they're trying to execute. People are saying, what if my plea deal proffer gets leaked? And they find that I also kind of made something up maybe for the government and it doesn't sync with what my public actions were, like getting paid, tens of thousands of dollars, or like posting tweets like Trump should never concede. There's incongruities here. So maybe that will cause the government to not get them to flip, In other words, Jenna will say what Jenna will say to the government because she's like, well, they no, it's all going to be sealed. They'll tell you whatever you want, we'll deal with it at trial, whatever, if there is a trial. But, she'll just kind of leave it there. But the video won't leak or none of that. But now it leaks, and so the plea deals kind of get derailed. They say, and this is kind of Fannie's argument, it's like, we can't pressure people if you can all see everything that's happening. So on November 13th, they say, this is the date that the videos got leaked, confidential video recordings of proffers, which is what we watched, conducted by the state with certain witnesses pursuant to guilty plea agreements, again, not convictions, were published by ABC News and other media outlets. We just watched them. Now, these confidential video recordings were not released by the state to any party other than the defendants charged in the indictment pursuant to the discovery process as required by law. Now, of course, they'll say that, oh, well, these are government prosecutors. We can trust them. They don't leak any documents. And we know that's nonsense, right? They leak all the time. These are materials that somehow always end up in the Washington Post or the New York Times, or these materials. Like, we've seen all sorts of crazy stuff out of Georgia in particular, right? With the grand jury and the grand jury foreperson woman, and all sorts of stuff has been leaking out of Georgia for years. So I don't buy that for a minute, right? I'm not saying that Fannie did it, but I'm not saying that you can automatically rule her out. She says, or somebody from her team, somebody from her office. Now, they're going to blame another defendant. And you can see on November 14th, they say, which is the date of this recording, counsel for Harrison William Prescott Floyd sent an email to the state. So the lawyer for Harrison Floyd sent an email to the state, to members of the defense, and to the court that stated the following, quote, it was Harrison Floyd's team. And they say, see Exhibit B. This is an email from T.A. Harding. What on earth? The guy just admits that it's his client? Okay, and so that's the original protective order from Fannie. Let's see what Exhibit B looks like. This is email. This came in 7/14 at 9:30 in the morning, 7:29. Regarding proffers leaked to the media. Somebody's going, man. Kamikaze Hitman sends an email. Kamikaze Hitman on 9/13, he says, regarding proffers leaked to the media. This goes to Nathan Wade, who is Fannie's, kind of hand-chosen mentor, who's been paid a lot of money to prosecute these cases, and Steve Sado also got this email. Everything else is redacted. Now, we don't know what is happening in these redactions. Probably CCing everybody else, court clerks, everybody in the whole staff. So, it's from Kamikaze Hitman to Nathan Wade and everybody, and it says here, T.A. Harding, J.D., attorneys at law. It was Harrison Floyd's team, period. Sincerely, T.A. Harding. Harrison Floyd did it. What? Now, but something happened. Now here, Nathan J. Wade, Fannie's former mentor, said the state had nothing to do with leaking any information to the media. Nothing to do. At all. Sent that one at well, that was printed at 9:29. We don't know when it was sent. November 13th, from Steve Sado to others. He says, it appears that ABC, CNN, WAPO have obtained leaked copies of the video proffers. Oh, they got Chesebro too. Now, Steve Sado said, these proffers did not come from Jennifer or me, or anyone connected to my defense team. This is not from the defense. Please state for the record whether the prosecution or anyone connected to the prosecution team had any hand in the disclosure of the proffers to the media. That's Steve Sado. Okay, he's not happy about this. And so then Nathan Wade responded right away and said the state had nothing to do with leaking any information to the media. And T.A. Harding said it was Harrison Floyd's team. But that's Harrison Floyd's lawyer? That's a little bit strange. So we'll come back to that. Now, this is the certificate of service, so we don't need that. But let's go back to the filing. So this is the motion for an emergency hearing. And they say it was Harrison Floyd's team. The email was sent in response to an email from another defense attorney inquiring into whether the state, that's the Steve Sado email, was the person that released the confidential video recordings. The state previously indicated that it did not publicly release the confidential information and the recordings. And then counsel for Harrison William Scott Floyd then sent a subsequent email that we did not see in the exhibits, stating that his prior email was a typo. Oh, what? That's a weird typo, man. Sometimes when I type a complicated word like conscience, you know, I get everything all discombobulated. It's like C-O-N-S-C-I-E-N-C-E, I think, right? You know, and, you know, it gets complicated. C and the I and the O and the U and all the things. But, you know, that's kind of a hard typo to hit, you know. So, you know, I don't usually make that mistake when I'm typing. You know, blah, 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 blah. It was Harrison Floyd's team, you know. Oops. Spell check. It's kind of a big typo there. So I don't know what the rest of the context was around that. Like, did he just say, oops, typo? Or did he say something more to that? We don't know. But kind of a big typo there. So then the lawyer sent another email. Oops, that was a typo. He said, by the way, our client, defendant Floyd's team, did not communicate with the media. We did not. So it was not Harrison Floyd's team. So all defendants, says Fannie, have been previously released on bond with conditions of release that prohibits them from intimidating any person known to be a co-defendant, communicating any facts of this case, or otherwise obstructing the administration of justice. Fannie's office says the release of these confidential video recordings is clearly intended to intimidate witnesses in this case, who maybe they're trying to turn, who then say, I don't want my videos going out, subjecting them to harassment and threats prior to trial. Or this constitutes indirect communication about the facts of the case with co-defendants, witnesses, obstructs the administration of justice, and violates the conditions of release. So Fannie says, now going forward, Your Honor, since you have not granted me our protective order, the state will not produce copies of confidential video recordings of proffers to any defendant to prevent further public disclosure. We're not giving those out anymore. Instead, the defendants must come to the office to view the confidential recordings of the proffers. They may take notes, but they're going to be prohibited from creating any recordings or reproductions. So in light of the release of the confidential video recordings, the state requests that the court, 1, enter a temporary order prohibiting disclosure of any discovery materials by any party, 2, schedule an emergency hearing on the state's motion filed, and at the conclusion of the hearing, enter a permanent order prohibiting the disclosure of discovery materials by any party. Respectfully submitted the 14th day of November, 2023, signed by F. McDonald Wakeford, Chief Senior Assistant DA out of Big Fanny's office. Now, this was the original filing for the protective order of other discovery materials, and they're going to be making an argument for that. The judge has granted a hearing on this, and that's going to be taking place on November 15th, coming up soon. Now, as to the typo, some great suggestions in the chat. I saw one. Maybe they were trying to maybe they just forgot the word not. Oh, maybe that's all it was. You know, maybe it's Harrison Floyd's team saying it was not Harrison Floyd's team. Okay. Could have been that simple, right? I just forgot it. Or it wasn't, right? It wasn't Harrison Floyd's team. Maybe he just dictated it. It wasn't Harrison Floyd's team, and Siri got it wrong, you know, or something. So this could be that, you know, who knows what happened with it, but we're going to have an ultimate decision on this tomorrow because it will be streamed live on the Georgia Court YouTube channel from Scott McAfee. The judge posted this. He says, having read and considered the state's emergency motion for a protective order, this is scheduled for a hearing Wednesday, November 15th. We'll also be live streamed and posted on the YouTubes. And so, of course, my friends, we will be here to continue to cover this when we have some results on it. We're covering all of the Trump trials, in particular, the RICO, Georgia, Big Fanny case. And so we'll see what the judge says about this, what McAfee says, if he is questioning the defense or if he issues the protective order. We'll be there to cover it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. Would love it if you checked out our website, robertgovea.com, signed up for our daily newsletter. That way you can get all of these segments and more, including access to this mind map and all the documents on the screen, delivered to your inbox every single day. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, now let's hop on over to Judge Chutkan's court because we've got a gag order and the Court of Appeals brief to unpack. Jack Smith submits his appellate response, and we're going to go through it, and he's really begging the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals to keep the gag order in place. This gag order is the one that Judge Chutkan slapped upon Trump and said that he can't call the deranged thugs in Jack Smith's office deranged thugs, and he can't even comment on any reasonably foreseeable witnesses who are going to be involved in the case. We know that reasonably foreseeable witnesses might be hundreds, if not thousands of people. And so Trump's free speech rights are now coming to a head against the government and Judge Chutkan's so-called safe courtroom practices, according to a local rule. And Trump has already submitted his appeal, and now Jack Smith is responding. And so this issue might very well end up at the Supreme Court. So we're going to go through Jack Smith's response on this. And one of the first things that's most interesting about this is that Jack Smith admits that Donald Trump has not even been charged with insurrection yet, even though he's essentially calling him an insurrectionist. And so let's go through it. It's a 67-pager. We'll see who wrote it. We got oral arguments scheduled in this case November 20th, 2023, and we'll be covering that in detail. They might even be live streamed or audio streamed, so we might have some good segments from it. So be sure that you are subscribed to follow along with this. But this is Jack Smith, along with Molly and the rest of them, signing off on this answering brief for the United States government filed in the United States District Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Here is what they tell us. They say that it's been certified. We've got a table of contents. We have our table of authorities. We're going to jump right into the introduction, and we're going to see Jack Smith makes a pretty interesting admission right away. He says, the issue is, of course, is whether the gag order is allowed. But this is the background, he says. Your Honors, at the Court of Appeals, this is Jack Smith speaking, this case stems from Trump's criminal efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election and prevent the lawful transfer of power to his successor. Now, they give us a quick background here. On August 1st, a grand jury charged him with 4 counts. Count 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Great. Counts 2, and 3 charged with conspiracy and substantive violations of 15C2, which is going to be also at the Supreme Court, for corruptly obstructing the certification of the presidential election results on January 6th, right? Literally, for obstruction on January 6th. And then count 4 charges a conspiracy to violate one or more persons' constitutional right to vote. Conspiracy against rights. Got it. Now, the one thing you'll notice, and Jack Smith admits right here, he says, although the indictment does not charge Trump with incitement to insurrection, which you could charge him with under 18 U.S. Code 2383, the indictment squarely alleges that he is responsible for the events of January 6, where they say, quote, lives were lost, blood was shed, portions of the Capitol building were badly damaged, and lives of members of Congress were endangered. And so again, it's like, what? Okay. So then why didn't you indict him for that? Hello? Just charge him for insurrection then, Jack. If all this is true, if lives were lost, right? Like Ashley Babbitt, who was shot and killed. Blood was shed, like when the police were shooting down from the rooftops, blowing holes in people's cheeks, as we heard from testimony in the Proud Boys trial. Shoot, boom, 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 just shooting off at people before there was any need to, right? Instigating the whole scene. Very curious. So they say the district court has scheduled trial to begin March 4th, one day before Super Tuesday. Jury questionnaires go out February 9th, so we start getting some jurors in. They say that in all of this, the court has scheduled a trial date for this time, even though Trump wanted it April 2026. And they say, we've held several hearings on this, Court of Appeals. Jack Smith argues, at a hearing shortly after Trump's indictment, the district court, through Judge Chutkan, noted that the court was, quote, committed to ensuring this case proceeds in the normal course that our criminal justice system prescribes. Now, to that end, court explained that although the defendant would be afforded all the rights, the court was also cognizant of the efforts to prevent a carnival atmosphere of unchecked publicity, and said that the court issued a general word of caution. But even after these admonitions, Trump has persistently used social media. This is Jack Smith, government prosecutors, whining about Trump's Truth Social posts like little babies, to make prejudicial comments about the case and its participants. 3 days after the indictment, Trump issued a public threat, says Jack. If you go after me, I'm coming after you, which I absolutely endorse, by the way. It's like, hello, what are you kidding? If you think you can just launch political prosecutions on one side in the country and not expect the pendulum to swing the other way, like that's why we didn't start criminal prosecutions in this country for 234 years. We just said, it's not worth it, man, because it's Banana Republic stuff. Because this is what happens, obviously. And if Trump did it, okay, if Trump actually did indict Hillary, well, we'd all be sitting here going, well, of course he's going to be indicted. What do you think's going to happen? Hello? Here's why he didn't. But the Democrats broke glass in case of emergency. They cannot have Trump win again. And, that'd be the end of them. So they're coming after him. So, of course, he should come after them. Okay, that's called politics. And if you're going to weaponize the judicial system, the person who captures the flag of the judicial system makes the rules. Sorry, man. And so now they want to shut him up for even bringing that up. So they followed through on that threat. He used disparaging and inflammatory language to target the district court, the special counsel and the deranged thugs there, and trial witnesses, as he knew from discovery that we're expected to offer inculpatory testimony against him. They were going to incriminate him. So Trump described a pending district court judge as a fraud and a hack, Judge Chutkan. He repeatedly called the prosecutors in the case deranged, which, called them thugs, called them lunatics, and asserted that one of them, whom he identified by name, had gone to the White House for an improper purpose, a claim that he knew to be false from the materials that he had reviewed in discovery, probably talking about Jay Bratt. He described his former vice president, Mike Pence, as delusional, not a very good person, who wants to show he's a tough guy, which is all he was running against him in the presidency. He said the former vice president made up stories, and Trump should not be allowed to say, like, you see where this is going? He should not be allowed to talk about this stuff. He said that the person that he appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, white rage guy, another foreseeable trial witness, had done something so egregious that he should be punished accordingly. He said the potentially unfavorable testimony was a lie. And he made all these statements, and all of these statements were amplified by social media users, including his followers. Oh, gross, MAGA people, who he has boasted listened to him like no one else, and then widely reported on in the national media. So Trump has a community, man. Trump has a group of people, a movement who are going to support him, and they don't like that at all. 4 days after the indictment, he said, if you go after me, I'm coming after you. One of his followers called the district court and said, hey, you stupid bad word. If Trump doesn't get elected, we're coming to eliminate you. So tread lightly. You'll be targeted and your family, all of it. Okay, so this is an illegal statement. You see this here? This is wild. So they're actually even referencing the case. This is a criminal complaint. Okay, so by the way, if you call a judge and leave a statement like this, hey, we're coming to remove you, judge, that's a crime. And they take it very seriously. You cannot do anything like this to anybody in the government at all. Don't even joke about it. Which is why when Joe Biden was posting on his X account, hey, text me. Just text me how you think I'm doing. I'm like, do not text him. Okay, you'll have the feds show up at your doorstep. So this person called. They made a bad comment, probably somebody who's not very well, and here is what we see. They got charged with a crime. The case is called United States versus Schrei, and and they may have been under the influence. I don't know what happened, but it's not, they got charged is my point. Like, there is recourse for this. That episode, they say, was part of a pattern stretching back years. And so they really dug in. They're like, Judge, do you have any bad phone calls? Like anything? She's like, I don't know. She's like, no, most things are just like, this is my housekeeper. This is my girl's school. No, no bad messages. Okay, I think we have one. And they dug one up. But this is a pattern. Say an election commissioner who was targeted by Trump in the aftermath of 2020. So now we go all the way back. So the one complaint, this guy got charged with a crime back in August. Southern District of Texas, he called from. Now, after the president tweeted at this person in 2020, oh man, there were some threats. They became much more graphic and they came in to me. Again, illegal. An election worker also testified when someone as powerful as Trump eggs on a mob, and a state judge also said that some people need additional protection. So since for the presiding judge, they're ordered the removal of the post. Okay, oh my gosh, this is the New York case. Ah, gosh. All right, so I told you, man, we've seen this, okay? They are just playing off the judges. So Jack Smith goes over to Judge Engoron, who's an elected Democrat, whose law clerk called Allison Greenfield has a history of making thousands of dollars of donations to Democrats, who has been passing him, I don't know what kind of love notes. The thing has been so corrupt that the judge has gagged the defense attorneys from even commenting on their little massage sessions in the middle of the trial. And so now Jack Smith is referencing that in the Chutkan case in the Court of Appeals. Let's make sure we're right about this. He said, so what happened was there was a tweet, a state judge, probably Engoron, likewise described needing additional police protection after the defendant targeted him on social media. More recently, the defendant, Trump, posted a social media photograph of a state judge's law clerk. Oh, it's his Greenfield. Along with the caption falsely alleging that she was the girlfriend of a political adversary like Chuck Schumer. Now, the presiding judge there ordered the removal of the post, but has stated, this is Engoron, since the commencement of this bench trial, my chambers have been inundated with hundreds of harassing and threatening phone calls, voicemails, emails, letters, and packages, all of which, okay, if they're actually threatening, are prosecutable. And the feds take it very seriously. They'll prosecute it, and they go find the people. Easy. It's very easy. Where'd you call from? Where did the phone call come from? Like, show up. You're under arrest, threatening a federal judge or a state judge. Doesn't play well. So why don't they report all of these things, okay? Or are they just people saying, hey, what you're doing is, not appropriate, and I'm articulating my disdain for you as a citizen of your jurisdiction? Now, as alleged in the indictment, Jack Smith says, Trump seeks to use this well-known dynamic to his advantage. It's called free speech. Hello. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It's so when there are tyrannical endeavors like the one you're on, Jack, that somebody can speak out about it and galvanize the public to their side. And by the way, if Trump is wrong, if the public is against him, then he has no tools. They'll just listen to his free speech. They'll say he's whacked and he'll lose. So you will not need to gag him. But the problem is he's right and you're wrong, which is why you got to silence him. They say he's using this like he did with Mike Pence. He said that he alerted the Secret Service detail. He says he targeted Mike Pence. And we knew this was going to be the narrative again, okay? Trump used social media to insurrect on January 6th, and Trump is going to use social media to insurrect again. That's going to be the narrative. Trump has done this for a long time. He's recently described this dynamic. He says it's continued unabated in this case and other cases involving Trump for years. And they give us some background here, okay? Now they're going to be explaining why the gag order is so appropriate. They say, in 1966, the Judicial Conference studied a lot of this stuff, and they created a bunch of rules for us. Now, they did 2 years of deliberation and research, and they came up with some rules. In 1980, they released a revised report, and the U.S. District Court has adopted a local rule that mirrors the language that was proposed by the committee, okay? So Judge Chutkan and her district court, they've adopted this local rule based on all of that other stuff. And the local rule is close. It says, in a widely publicized or sensational criminal case, a court may, among other things, issue a special order governing the matters like extrajudicial statements by the parties that are likely to interfere with the rights of the accused to a fair trial by an impartial jury. Isn't that interesting? So Trump's statements, it looks like this rule is crafted for the rights of the accused. Well, what if Trump wants to waive that? Okay, he thinks his free speech is going to support his rights, not harm his rights. The gag is interfering with his rights, not otherwise. But on September 15th, the government filed on the public docket a gag order. Trump obviously opposed gag order. And at the hearing, the district court reviewed a bunch of Trump statements and made her rulings. And she said that there are incidents that have led people to be harassed and threatened. The district court asked the defense about the purpose behind his labels, and she says it risks a real possibility of violence for calling people thugs and calling them deranged. I guess he should only call them legal scholars. The legal scholars at the DOJ are prosecuting me in a manner that I find slightly offensive, but otherwise morally acceptable because I can't say otherwise, because I'm a polite person and free speech is not really free or something. What are you talking about? It's called free speech. In his view, they say, well, Trump made some comments about Milley and others. Now, the court orally granted the government's motion, said, yes, I need to silence Trump to administer justice, and then issued the gag order. In its written order, the court reiterated that we have to safeguard these proceedings and that undisputed evidence is that Trump has publicly attacked individuals, and those people are then subsequently harassed. The judge found that witnesses will be intimidated, and we don't want people becoming threats of harassment and so on. Now, we're getting through some of the history, so let's fast forward and see what the argument says. They say the district court order, Court of Appeals, should be affirmed. There has never been a criminal case in which a court has granted a defendant an unfettered right to try his case in the media. Do you see how they flip this? Wild. So Trump's defense said there has never been a case where a criminal defendant has been gagged like this. Never. And they say, oh yeah? Well, there's never been a right where a defendant has been granted the right to say whatever he wants, where he can malign the prosecutor and his family, and after threatening a witness, he can say, if you go after me, I'm coming after you. They really don't like that line because they know they're first on the chopping block, from being fired from government. Says target specific witnesses with attacks on their character and credibility, calling one a weakling. They are weaklings. Calling them cowards. They are cowards. They are. They're trying to gag him and do all this stuff without cameras in the dark of night, suggesting that another actions warrants punishment. well, treason carries certain punishments. The defendant, nevertheless, Trump, claims that the First Amendment grants him unfettered right to do these things and more. It absolutely does. That's absolutely true. He insists that the district court is powerless to prevent him from posting photographs of court personnel. Why should they be? Or publicly, is it illegal? Or publicly telling known witnesses that they should learn to keep their mouth shut. Now, he's in the middle of a political campaign. He's allowed to talk about politics. The fact that you're prosecuting him for a crime that is a political crime is your problem. Doesn't mean that he suddenly negates his free speech defense to these political charges. The demonstrable likelihood that such targeted attacks will result in threats, harassment, and intimidation, in the defendant's view, is totally irrelevant. It is, because Trump's free speech is a separate issue. If those people are harassed by other people who are not Trump, but by the way, if Trump commits harassment, if Trump commits intimidation, that's a new crime. If any one of his posts amounts to legal intimidation or legal harassment or constitutes a legal threat, charge him, Jack. Just like they charged this other guy up above. He called and made an actual threat to the judge. They arrested him. If Trump does something that constitutes an actual threat, then charge him. Otherwise, it's free speech. The most the district court can do, he maintains, is accede to his repeated request to delay the trial, ask the counsel to delay the admonitions, and hope that he abides by them. But the First Amendment, says Jack Smith, does not require the court to adopt such an ineffectual approach to protecting the integrity and the fairness of criminal proceedings. To the contrary, district courts have an affirmative duty to prevent trial participants, including attorneys and defendants, from engaging in extrajudicial speech that poses a substantial likelihood to materially prejudice the proceedings. The district court entered the order correctly here. The order was based, Court of Appeals, on well-supported findings, narrowly tailored, right? So meaning it's not unconstitutional. And by the way, there's two constitutional layers here: Trump's right to speak and our right to receive. What good is speaking if there's nobody listening? And more sufficiently clear to provide with Trump with fair notice of conduct that he must abide by. The order leaves Trump to do virtually everything that he's claimed he's able to do, including even describing the prosecution as being politically motivated. And so they say, Your Honors, this order should be affirmed. And briefly, we'll hit some of the highlights. They say the district court issued an appropriate order, and you should be deferential to them. They're allowed to use the local rules to govern their courtrooms. A lot of case here, okay? As you can see, we're fast forwarding through all the parentheticals, all the italics, all the cases. They're just copy and pasting all the case law, blah, blah, blah. Despite being a trial participant, they say that the clear and present danger test applies, meaning Trump's free speech is still protected unless it meets that standard. And they're saying, no, this rule supersedes that, and defendants are regularly subject to liberty restrictions, right? They're under indictment. So we are used to restricting their liberties, and free speech is one of those that we can impose. A court may impose these restrictions simply because he's a party to an indictment. The court gets jurisdiction and supervision. So they say that the court has the right to do this. The district court had the authority to issue this order, and it satisfies this standard. It was appropriate and it was necessary. Otherwise, we're not going to have a fair trial. First, Trump has a long history of using his social media accounts to target perceived adversaries and singling them out. Second, when he does that, intimidation reliably follows. Then those harassments brought by those other third parties pose a significant and immediate risk that the witnesses will be intimidated or otherwise unduly influenced or will become targets of threats and harassment themselves. You know, all speculative based on Trump's statements, and they are trying to muzzle him now. They say Trump does not meaningfully dispute the accuracy of these findings, which were not erroneous, and so the lower level court should be affirmed. They say the court findings were inadequate because they weren't based on affidavits or live testimony, But they say, no, we've seen enough in the pattern. He's just done it long enough. Here, they drag this quote out again. If you go after me, I'm coming after you, which is part of the reason, we're going to vote for him here. But because the district court's order was directed at preventing material prejudice, the court properly focused on the effect of the conduct, and there is an exception to the first rather than on the exception to the First Amendment. So the judge is just saying, look, it's my courtroom. I got to protect my courtroom. And the same principle applies here at the Court of Appeals level. They say the order is narrowly tailored. So it's far narrower. Okay, so Trump actually, we're giving him plenty of speech. Look at these other cases that say we can do this. The order here is even narrower than those. They just say that it's about the case, but he can still talk about the political prosecution that's taking place here. And as we wrap up through the rest of this, let's see what they're ultimately asking for. This is a lot of the case law is being dumped here, and we'll fast forward to the conclusion. A lot of case law here. You can see Jack Smith, Molly Gaston signed off on it, and they bring us to a close. They say courts have rejected vagueness challenges to other even less clear orders. One of the arguments that Trump made is that I don't even know what this order means, all right? It says like no reasonably foreseeable witness. That could be anybody. And so it's so vague, I can't even tell what it involves. And they say this has all been rejected previously. And so the court should also reject Trump's vagueness challenge here. And for the foregoing reasons, the court should affirm Judge Chutkan's gag order signed by Jack Smith, Molly Gaston, and the rest of the deranged thug prosecutors over there at the DOJ going into the DC Court of Appeals. And so this is something that we'll continue to follow. Of course, we'll have oral arguments scheduled back on November 20th, 2023. I do believe that they might even be audio streamed. So we'll clip from there and cover exactly what happened. So my friends, thank you for subscribing on this channel. We're covering all the Trump cases. We'll be doing so indefinitely. And so we hope that you join us. We'd also love it if you checked out robertgovea.com and sign up for our daily newsletter. And that way we can stay connected as this case and others unfold. And so we do have one final clip here. Now, Speaker Johnson was asked about this because he's being asked about Trump being under indictment and what his take is. And he says, I think Trump is really in alignment with the rule of law. He did some good work on the Supreme Court judges, and all of these efforts and all of his statements are, acceptable. And he's not trying to instigate harassment. He's trying to speak out against the political prosecutions that are taking place against him. Here is the new speaker.
I know that he has been absolutely consistent from day one, and he does believe in the rule of law. I mean, look at what he did on the U.S. Supreme Court, for example. He gave us great justices that are restoring the integrity of that institution, in my view. We had, of course, many judges throughout the system that he appointed, and that's the longest-lasting legacy of any
Speaker,
president.
you're talking about the rule of law.
So he has a good record on that.
You're talking about the rule of law, and he's now been indicted, on 40 different charges. There's such a juxtaposition behind the idea of rule of law and then things that he's done that may very well have broken the law. And I recognize that there's elements of it that may be political. I'm not even going to dismiss that.
They're political
but I'll stipulate with you that there are elements that are probably true that are political, but not all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Listen,
Yes.
I think this is motivated by political prosecutions, and we call it lawfare. That's what it is. It's just another way to go after a candidate. And what's happened to President Trump is unprecedented.
True.
And every time a new indictment drops, it follows after some favorable thing that he gets in the poll or in the election or whatever.
Always happens. Maybe they'll indict him again because they keep losing. So, of course, my friends, we'll be here continuing to cover. Thank you for subscribing and joining us at robertgovea.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, and now we've got one final segment to attend to as we hop on a plane and go over to New York City. Lunacy in the New York civil trial brought by Tishy Latish James. We're back in with Donald Trump's case in chief, and he brought two experts onto the stand today. We'll check in at the X Script thread we'll hear from Steve Witkoff, a real estate executive and a Trump friend who testified today, along with this guy, Jason Flemings, an accountant, and we'll check in on the X script with our friend Klasfeld Reports over on the X platform. But we pick up from yesterday in the New York civil trial because Don Jr. had finished testifying, and right after trial ended, he came out and gave a quick stinger for the media. But this comes in the aftermath of Letitia's statement about Don Jr. And of course, Donald Trump's case is now going, and he is bringing his witnesses. Don Jr. had already testified previously when Letitia called him, and then after she was done with her case, Trump is now going, and Don Jr. was first up for the defense. So we'll check in with what Tish says, then we'll hear from Don, then we'll jump into the day's activities and get up to speed. Here is Letitia, aka Tish James, New York Attorney General, getting us up to speed on her government case.
Today marked the start of the 7th week of our trial against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants, and the first day of their attempt to defend their family fraud. The first witness was Donald Trump Jr., who took the stand to talk about his dad's business. But rather than respond to any legal claim against him and his family, or address the substantial evidence against them, Donald Trump Jr. spent his entire time on the stand talking through pictures of Trump properties.
Are you mad or what?
In his sales pitch,
you sound mad.
Donald Trump Jr. described his father as a real estate artist.
Well?
He described Trump golf courses as crown jewels.
They are great golf
He showed us
courses.
pictures of apartment building lobbies. He called Mar-a-Lago an American castle. And he even said that no one was putting gyms in apartment buildings before his father did.
Well, he changed it, a lot of that.
And after spending a full day walking through a marketing presentation to sell us all on the greatness of the Trump Organization, the defendant still did not make a single point to refute the case we brought against them.
What is your point?
This is a courtroom, not a boardroom. The Trumps can try to impress and distract with glossy pictures of golf courses and glowing descriptions of condominium towers.
It's about valuation.
But we all know the facts of this case.
Valuation.
And the facts don't lie.
Oh my gosh, the facts don't lie. All right, my friends, that's what they're doing over there. That's a governing person. Amazing. It's about valuation, okay? They were showing you the value of all the properties and how they would communicate to these other banks in order to get loans and get deals and what they would build and why it was worth what they said it was worth. So, all right, that's Tish. She doesn't do much other than sits there and reads in front of a teleprompter, which is, kind of embarrassing even for her. But this is what Don Jr. said after the day of testimony, and then we'll get up to speed on what happened with the latest experts.
Go. How did it go? Listen, I sort of a boring cross exam. I thought they were going to go somewhere, but I think they understand that they have nothing as it relates to a case other than, I guess, an overzealous attorney general who would destroy all of New York business by going after transactions where there are no victims, I guess, other than herself. But you guys have got to think about the precedent that this case sets. If an attorney general can years later, after all parties of transactions are paid back in full, with interest, making hundreds of millions of dollars, where they have no complaint, where they said they wouldn't have done anything differently, where every witness, as it relates to my brother and I, every witness that the Attorney General has called have said that my brother and I were not involved in the statement of financial condition. That even includes their star witness, the perjurer in chief, Michael Cohen, who's perjured himself probably more times than any human being I can think of. Even he said, perhaps the one time he was actually telling the truth in all of this, that my brother and I had nothing to do with it, but it doesn't matter because it's a witch hunt. It always has been. But the precedent that it sets for New York business, if you don't perhaps donate to Letitia James' re-election campaign, I too will go after your billion-dollar transactions. It's ripe for extortion and corruption, but that's what you get from the Democrat Party in New York these days, it seems. So it's a scary precedent. I don't know how anyone could do business in this city with that. Anyone you speak to who's actually in banking, who's actually in real estate, understands that. But again, they don't want to put themselves in the crosshairs, so perhaps they'll be silent. So it's a disgrace that this is happening right now, but I think we'll make our points, we'll make our case, and we'll go on from there. So you guys have a great day.
All right, so that's Don Jr. with a short statement after the trial testimony. And that was Donald Trump's day one case in chief. Now we're jumping into day two. And we got some additional witnesses who were there called in today. This guy, Steve Witkoff, we put a face to a name, a real estate executive and a Donald Trump friend. And this guy also came in the afternoon, Jason Flemings, an accountant, forensic accountant, somebody who knows accounting. So we're going to check in with the day's events. Adam Klasfeld is reporting. He's a great follow for legal coverage, and you can follow him at Klasfeld Reports. He's reporting for The Messenger. And we get started with the defense. Now, he says, good morning from New York. The first witness up today is Steve Witkoff, one of the 4 experts that AG Tisch tried to preclude. Now, they start off, they say, Your Honor, defense calls Mr. Witkoff to testify. Steve here. Steve stands up. Steve, you promise to tell the truth, done to truth, God? He says, yes, I do. Okay, Steve, tell us about, where are you from? Born and raised, maybe New York, I don't know. Tell me about your career. Well, I've done a lot in real estate, built a lot of buildings, a lot of projects. I came to know Trump through some of our projects. We've been friends for, I don't know, a couple decades, long time. Okay, so and you've done a lot of work with real estate? Yeah, a lot. Can you tell us how much? A lot. Okay, Your Honor, you see, he's an expert in real estate. We moved to qualify him as an expert. So we moved to qualify Steve. Government says, objection. Your Honor, first of all, I think we should only limit his expertise to what we'll call real estate development. Okay, very, very limited. Says there's no such expertise as real estate developer valuations. And so we don't want to make him an expert on valuations. We're going to make him an expert on development. Like he can build the buildings, but he can't evaluate and value the buildings, they say. Trump's defense says, what the heck are you talking about? Christopher Key stands up. He says appraisal isn't only under the purview of appraisers, okay? A lot of people can evaluate and value a building. Now, Engoron says, well, I'm going to agree with the government on this one. Chris, you're wrong. They're right, as per usual. And so, Mr. Witkoff, you are an expert in real estate development, okay? You can tell us how the buildings are made, but you can't tell us how much they cost. All right. So Witkoff says, okay, whatever. So he says, tell me, Mr. Witkoff, how did you come to know Donald Trump, former president? Oh my gosh, wow. A long time ago, I was hungry having lunch one day and I met Trump at a delicatessen more than 2 decades ago. I'll never forget it. Turkey Club, great sandwich. And he's been a really good friend since then. And he says, particularly after the death of my son. And so shout out to the Witkoff family and rest in peace to your son. And shout out to Donald Trump for being a good friend. And they say, Mr. Witkoff, are you being paid for your testimony here today? He says, no, I'm not. Expert witnesses usually get paid. No, I'm not getting paid for this. He says, well, I want to ask you about how you would do deals. What was your strategy for doing business deals? Witkoff says, well, the way I look at things, I would look at multiple deals. A lot of stuff would come in and I would pick projects. I would think that the best deals are the deals that have multiple exit strategies. I'd like to be able to get out of them. And if I had multiple options, that made me feel good. Your Honor, I move to admit this document or this testimony. And the government objects. They say, no, Your Honor, objection to that. That's probably a valuation. And we're talking about development. He can't testify about that, blah, blah, blah. So Trump's lawyer, Christopher Keese, he's, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. All right, it goes to the question of materiality at issue in the remaining counts at issue in this trial. There's a lot going on here and we need to get to the bottom of it. He says everyone in this trial, Trump's lawyer, is running around saying fraud, fraud, fraud. This is fraud. That's fraud. There's fraud, fraud, fraud. Every return is fraud from you people. Nonstop. No. He says that has not even been decided yet. Stop saying fraud. There is no fraud. And I'm tired of hearing fraud come out of your fraud mouths. And the judge is like, wait a minute, man. Wait a minute. And Keese says, no, let me finish. Fraud everywhere. And I'm sick of it. And Keese goes on. He says, and the fraud also complies with the intent and the materiality, and that hasn't even been established yet either. And so I'm tired of hearing about it. The judge is like, hey, finally gets control of the situation. And of course, Engoron, he says, stop it a minute. He says, I'm sustaining the government's objection to some of the testimony at issue here. Now, the witness was excused while all this was going on. And Christopher Keese, he says, you're going to give them This standard, he says, the government standard is lunacy, Judge. It's lunacy. I can't believe that you even ruled the way that you did. And of course, before this trial started, Engoron had found that they've already were liable for fraud. Okay, he just issued a ruling on that. He said, having prevailed, Tishy wins, there is fraud, they're liable, and this really is about damages. And so Keese is saying, stop saying that. Nobody's been finding fraud here. They keep arguing. And then the government chimes up, Andrew stands up, and he says, Your Honor, can we please not have never-ending motions for reconsideration? In other words, the judge will make a ruling, and then Keese is putting up a fit, right? He's like, oh, this is lunacy and blah, blah, blah. And so they say, Judge, can you just tell him to shut up? Like, this is, he keeps asking you to reconsider, but you've already ruled. Just tell him to sit down. The judge says, you're right. So Mr. Witkoff, expert who's still on the stand, you're barred from offering an opinion about the Doral. He says, I think that's not relevant to this case, and I don't think we need to hear about it. Even though Tishy talked all about Doral. So he says, you can't offer an opinion about Doral. And so the lawyer now comes back and he says, okay, well, look, Mr. Witkoff, I want to ask you a separate question about a golf course that's going on. Government objection. Nope, we're not talking about golf courses here. And Engoron says, you guys keep objecting to all of this testimony, but here's what I want to ask. I want to know from you. Do you want to risk reversal here if I don't let in the question? Like, what if I don't let in this question and this comes back down because the Court of Appeals reverses it? You want to risk that, government? And the government says, actually, no, I have no concerns about that, actually. And the court has to draw clear lines about his broad discretion to bar irrelevant expert testimony. And he's like, no, I don't care. This is New York. What are they? You think they're going to reverse you and like exonerate Trump? No. So Engoron says, okay, fine. I'll sustain the objection then. So there you go. So he grants the government. No. So you're not worried about this coming back down on appeal? All right, fine. So, objection sustained. You guys win. So Witkoff testimony continues. They say, all right, government is sitting there like totally victorious, and Trump's defense continues on. And Mr. Witkoff, I want to move on to 40 Wall Street. Can I ask about this? And they say, yeah, you can ask about that. Okay, great. Before we get to it, they take a break. And we're back. Engoron brings the witness back, and he says, Mr. Witkoff, while we're here, have you ever been qualified as an expert before? And if so, what and where? And Witkoff says, no, I don't think so. I don't think I've ever been qualified as an expert. My mother might think I'm one. Shout out to the moms in the house. Man, we love our moms out there. The judge smiles and there's laughter in the courtroom. Shout out to the moms. Yeah, moms think we're experts. We love our mamas. So no further questions. Okay, they come back. They have a quick break. 40 Wall Street. Asks probably about some valuations of 40 Wall Street. This guy opines about it. And then cross-examination begins, okay? No further questions, Your Honor, says Trump's defense, and they wrap it up. Government begins. Tishy's government, Andrew, jumps up. And he says, good morning, Mr. Witkoff. I want to welcome you. I want to welcome your debut as an expert witness in court. It's probably pretty exciting for you. He says, you may want to rethink your no compensation agreement, though. They start laughing in the courtroom. Now, I want to go back to 40 Wall Street, says the government. Mr. Witkoff, were you aware of whether there was any restrictions on the ability to convert the property to condominiums? Any restrictions that you were aware of? No. I want to show you this document about 40 Wall Street with the following clause. Put it up on the screen. He says, paragraph 4 eliminates the tenant's condominium conversion rights, which it had under section 2709. You familiar with this? Witkoff, he says, well, I had cited the property's ability to be converted to condominiums in its value. He says, that's why I did that this way. And this clause is also in the modification to the ground lease on 40 Wall Street. So this is modifying the 40 Wall Street property lease. It says, in consideration of the elimination of section 2709 of the lease, landlord and tenant agree that if in the future tenant is of the opinion that the area and times favor the construction of residential units, which may be condominium units, and the tenant desires to create a residential condominium for sale of units to the public, tenant may propose revision to the lease to permit the conversion to condominium ownership for the sale of residential units, provided that in no event shall the landlord have any obligation to agree with or take action to effectuate the condominium conversions. Landlord has sole discretion. They say, do you remember that? He says, yeah, I see it. So the government continues. They say, Mr. Witkoff, how is the valuation of 40 Wall Street? Can you tell us about, it says that it's valued based on a cap rate and cash flow rather than its potential value as a condominium. So you see how the valuation was based on separate things, not that. You see that? Witkoff says, yeah, I see that. No further questions, Your Honor. Adam Klasfeld gives us a brief recap. He says that his testimony about the value of the condominium was contradicted by some documentary evidence. So they're just trying to, and Witkoff's proposed testimony was barred as irrelevant. All right, yeah. So not a real thrilling witness, in either way. But next up, the defense is continuing their case. They say, Your Honor, next up, the defense calls Jason Flemons. Jason Flemons comes up there. Mr. Flemons, you promise to tell the truth, told you to God? I do. Perfect. Mr. Flemons, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do? He says, yeah, I am a forensic accountant, and I am the senior managing director at Ancora, which happens to be an accounting firm. And this is Jason Flemons and what he does. And you can see here, it says he's the senior managing director at the place. This is what he looks like. Over 25 years of experience in forensic accounting, corporate investigations, technical accounting, auditing matters. Provides a broad range of expert and consulting services around accounting advisory, fraud examination, and so on. And he's done a lot of work, right? So that's this guy. Now, we continue on. He's testifying about his career, and he's got a lot. The judge says, well, before I can qualify you as an expert witness who can opine about some of this stuff, we got to talk about this, right? And so he does. Now he says, you're qualified as an expert. Okay, thanks for all that background. You are an expert. It sounds like you're very good. So they say, Mr. Flemons, can you tell us about the difference between estimated current value and fair value? And he gives this long explanation. He's like, yeah, this is this way and this is this way. It's very complicated. I'm very smart, but here's how we do evaluations. Great. No, it sounds like you know what you're talking about. And testimony continues. Flemons, he says that the language below from Trump's financial statement is, quote, the highest level of warnings. Now, Trump has this to say. Trump has described as worthless clauses. All right, so this is what Flemons is saying. This is a statement from a certified public accountant, Wenmeyer LLP. They say, because the significance in this statement, because the significance and the pervasiveness of the matters above make it difficult to assess their impact on the statement of financial condition, users of this financial statement should recognize that they might reach different conclusions about the financial condition of Donald J. Trump if they had access to a revised statement of financial condition without the above reference exceptions to the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So, in other words, you might have a different interpretation of this. They say to Flemons, you see that? He says, yeah, what does that mean to you? He says, that's the highest level of warning. And can you explain? He says, well, financial statements, and this is the Trump witness, right? He says, Flemons testifies that financial statements are permitted to have disclosed departures from GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles. So Tish is saying Trump didn't do things like generally, according to the generally accepted accounting principles. Trump deviated from that, and that was fraud. And Trump is saying, no, I didn't. It's not fraudulent. Yes, we made different valuations, different from GAAP, but it was not fraudulent because we disclosed it and we disclaimed it. They knew about it, and we were clear about it. The defense displays a chart about the grades of accountant assurance in the reliability of reports. They say, okay, so you said, Mr. Flemons, that this was the highest level of warning. So there must be other levels. Is that true? Yeah. Can you walk us through them? He says, sure. Puts a chart up on the screen. It looks like there's different bars, low, medium, high, whatever. He says, can you tell us about how, forensic accountants talk about these things? He says, I'd be happy to. He says the lowest confidence level would be from an adverse compilation, and the highest would be from an unqualified audit. And so Trump's financial statements were compilations with warnings. That's how he assembled them. So he says Trump's statements are at the bottom left corner, showing that they're low confidence. The testimony is offered. Now he says, right, it is low confidence. And we know this, this is what accountants do. We say this is really, really high confident. We know that this is legitimate and it can be verified. It's got good backing. We trust it. This one's not. But just because it's low confidence doesn't mean that it is fraudulent. They say the recipients who got the report, they weren't misled. They knew about it. In fact, there's a whole paragraph that says so. He says, and he continues, he explains it, right? They're not misled. There's all these different layers. This is exactly how it works. And they're done. They say, perfect. Thank you for that great explanation. So Trump didn't commit any fraud? No, of course. He disclosed all of the departures from the generally accepted accounting principles, let them know they knew all about it. They signed off on it. They had the opportunity to do their due diligence and so on. Great. Thank you, Mr. Flemons. No further questions. Now, his testimony is done for the day, and the direct examination is expected to continue in the morning. So they will be back tomorrow with this guy. And then there'll be cross-examination for the government as well. Engoron, he says, the judge, as Flemons is leaving, he says, Mr. Flemons, do you spell your name different from Mark Twain, whose original name or not pen name is called Samuel Clemens? Is Flemons like Clemens? He says, no, Judge, it's not. Stop asking me weird questions. So it looks like they are wrapping up earlier than in the day. And of course, we're grateful to Klasfeld for reporting this at Klasfeld Reports. Be sure you give him a follow. Of course, very likely he'll be there tomorrow. We'll be there to cover and try to assemble and unpack what is happening in the courtroom. But Trump is presenting his case in chief. We heard from these two experts, and Jason Flemings will continue on. But we'll wrap it up with a Weissman clip because, man, he's very upset that this is going on and that Trump is continuing to critique the judicial process, saying he's attacking the system, which of course is the whole point. Here is Weissman.
Of what he's, the impact of putting this out there and running on this message.
Well, I think it is part and parcel of attacking the rule of law because it is attacking the judicial system. He is having his day in court. That's the way it works. He is
by an elected prosecutor called Tisch, and Judge Engoron, also elected,
has an opportunity in court to convince the judge why he is right. Starting Monday, he will be calling witnesses in his case, as is his right, and his co-defendants. And that's the way the system works, whether it's a civil case or a criminal case. And when you don't like the outcome, especially as somebody who is in the government, attacking the umpire is not a way that you instill confidence in the system. But I think his entire goal is to delegitimize the system, to delegitimize people in law enforcement, to delegitimize journalists like you and Carol. It's to have no checks and balances. These are really the tools of an autocrat. And
it's weird. The only tool, literally the only tool Trump has is his speech. That's all. All he's doing is just talking about what they're doing to him. And it's causing them to panic, right? They control the executive branch. They control the DOJ. They control all the levers of power. And they're still freaked out because Trump is just saying that it's illegitimate. And my friends, if it was actually legitimate, there would be no concerns about this, okay? Think about it when you see a clear and dry case, okay? Somebody clearly DUI, somebody clearly, manslaughter or murder. Like it's not contested. Nobody challenges the legitimacy of those prosecutions. They're challenging these prosecutions because they are illegitimate. Trump speaking out about it just magnifies it, shines the spotlight down upon it, and they're pretending that it is all still legitimate when most Americans, I think, are realizing it is not. And for guys like Weissman and all the other hysterics on MSNBC and elsewhere, would they be sitting here with that same vibe if Trump were in charge, if this was a Republican prosecutor and a Republican judge under a Republican administration? No, of course not. They'd be crying from the rooftops that it was tyrannical, because it is, and they're the ones that are doing it. So my friends, we'll continue to cover. I'll look forward to seeing you as you join us on the next one. Thank you for subscribing, and really thank you for sharing this with a friend or family member. We go live every day at this time. We're covering all of the Trump cases. We would love it if you joined us, because there's going to be a lot more to unpack. Florida, New York, Georgia, January 6th, Colorado ballot removal, and more. Thank you for joining us as we cover it, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, we covered some good ground. That is it on the day. Now, as a reminder, let's take a quick look at the calendar. We do have some stuff coming up tomorrow. We're going to have closing arguments in the Colorado case. So had seen some questions about that, like what's taking so long? Closing arguments will be there. Trump has a motion to dismiss that is due on November 22nd, which we'll be talking about as well. It's a reply to his original filing. That's in the Chutkan case. And then we'll get some other dates up here on the calendar. We can see we got a lot coming up here into the next year. And so we'll be looking forward to having you join us. We also covered a lot, though. Let's see. We caught lunacy in the New York trial. Judge Chutkan, Judge Engoron going at it with Christopher Keese. Jack Smith begging the D.C. Court of Appeals to uphold that gag order so that they can continue to silence Trump. And of course, Fani Willis is requesting an emergency hearing, and we'll have that stream tomorrow. And so we'll see what Judge McAfee says about that in Georgia. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. I'd love to see what you have to say about this. Of course, we are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members-only after party as soon as we're done here for our members-only debrief. We'd love to have you join us there. We do members-only streams in the morning. We do Saturday shows. And we got some other fun stuff cooking. So come check us out. But now, my friends, let's hear from you and see what you have to say about this. It's a beautiful Tuesday, my friends. And here, starting us off over on the locals, is Wendy K. What's up, Wendy? Thanks for getting us started today. Says, howdy, Rob. Hope your Tuesday's going well for you and your family. Says, I've been a member since July 6th of this year. And now my day, Monday through Saturday, isn't complete without a breakdown of the wrongs and rights in this crazy world. Just want to say thank you for shedding that big, beautiful light on what is going on for all of us. Wendy, that is such a nice comment. And thank you for saying that. I'm glad that you join us, including on our Saturday streams. And I want to say thank you to you, Wendy. I mean, I'm grateful for the time that we spend together. I feel like I'm learning a lot. You know, we're having conversations that I would never be having about any of this stuff if it were not for you and for the work that we're doing here. So thank you very much for the very nice comment and for the nice dono and for being a member over on Locals for so many months. It's great to have you. Okay, and let's see. What a beautiful comment. Hey, this one came in from Vientikis. Did someone say Taco Tuesday? We love Taco Tuesday. And hey, another one from Wendy says, Rob, this post is for my fiance, Don Skagen. What's up, Don? Shout out to fiance Wendy K, Don Skagen. Says he's not a membo as I am, and we typically watch the afternoon evening stream on Rumble. He wanted me to let you know how much he appreciates what you do to help us all make sense of this nastiness that is happening. He specifically asked me to tip you $777. God bless what you're doing. He clearly has a mission for you. He clearly has a mission for you. Wendy, man, thank you so much. And Don, thank you, my friend. Extremely awesome to have you both here. I love it that you're, watching together and joining in on the fun. It is nasty. The world is a little bit maddening out there. And so I really am grateful for you. And there's a shared energy, there's a shared strength, and I think that we will persevere together. So I'm really grateful for it. It's very nice to have you in our community. And thank you. And hey, congratulations on the wedding, man. I mean, shout out. Fiance Don. Woo, Don. Don's getting married. Wendy's getting married. Woo. All right. Woo. All right. So that's fun. Good to see you guys. We got Knox Bierman's here. Says, you know, Jenna has been looking rather disheveled since her booking. I think she's having some serious issues. I don't know. It could be Jenna. You know, it could be Knox. She's really kind of being jerked around in multiple different directions. She's like, no, I need $200,000 for my legal defense. And then she pleads guilty, which will ultimately be dismissed. But it's like, okay, whose side are you on? And this video comes out where it feels like maybe she's making stuff up, and it's just feeling like it's not a good look, right? And when you are, you know, out of alignment with a uniform set of values, that's pretty difficult to live in that way, you know, to be pulled in multiple different directions. So I don't know what's going on, but hopefully she figures it out. Good to see you, Knox, and thanks for joining us. Voice of the People says, how can Jenna know what happened if she came into the case after those claims of hers were made? Well, I don't know exactly when she came into the case. I mean, the only claim that we saw from her video is, you know, hearsay claims that Dan Scavino, who's not even been charged with a crime, said something that maybe is problematic. I don't know. So I think, you know, from her perspective, she was there at the Christmas party, so she has direct evidence of Scavino's statement, but the reliability of that statement, the relevance of that statement is, you know, all up in the air. But, you know, the point is, after the fact, like 9 days later, she's posting on X Twitter that she supports Trump not conceding, which is, you know, curious indeed. Anyways, good to see you, Voice. Thanks for being a membo on the tubes. Hey, not a super chat, but this is an honorable mention, no doubt. So I saw some of these coming through the chat. I love this. So Chris Banks says Sidney Powell is looking more and more like Mrs. Doubtfire, which is not very, you know, not very nice. It says, I would just like to add discount Doubtfire. Oh gosh, that's the Robin Williams movie, which was like maybe one of the first trans movies, or, you know, that we ever saw, I think, or, you know, cross-dressing movies that we ever saw. It was a very interesting film. I remember seeing that as a kid. And yeah, I can see it. I can definitely see it. Knox Bierman's here. Said, I was still living in Tucson during 2020 and flying into Dallas-Fort Worth for court twice a month. Everywhere I went, in AZ and Texas, it was all pro-Trump. Yes, I did not go to New York City, but no one was touting Biden down south. So I can verify this feel in Arizona. Okay, in 2020 in Arizona, there was no Biden anywhere. I was shocked that Trump lost Arizona because it was like there was Trump everywhere. I mean, it was like crazy. And I think that there is actually some accuracy to that. Like there is, you know, based on like yard signs are indicative. There's a pattern there. It correlates with votes. So I agree. I felt like that. The results in Arizona did not feel right to me as somebody who lives here and just observes. Good to see you, Knox. GDL says, didn't he get kicked out of the Intelligence Committee because he didn't contribute any intelligence? You're probably talking about Shifty Adam Schiff. Yeah, well, he's been censured for sure. And I think, yeah, I don't think he's on the is he on the Intelligence Committee anymore? I don't think so. Yeah, I think McCarthy booted him off there. But now he's running for Senate or something. So it's good to see you, GDL. He is censured. You know, sometimes I forget to mention that. So I appreciate you guys reminding me. Voice of the People is here. Says, by the way, did anyone else catch the huge jump cut in the middle of Jenna's sentence in that vid? What else was said? I did catch that, Voice. Yeah, there was a jump cut when she was speaking. I don't know what they clipped out. But that's my point. Something feels very incomplete. Does ABC have more videos? Are there going to be more leaks? I don't know. Or is that it? Because if that's it, like that's not much of anything as far as I can tell. What's up, Dana in the house? Became a membo over on the YouTubes, and we're grateful to see you, Dana, joining us as a new membo. Good to have you. We got Fred says, who'd gain the most by releasing those proffers? That's a good question. Yeah, it depends on who you think, you know. Well, so I think Fannie's cases are pretty bad, personally. The leak of the proffers might make it harder for her to get plea deals, might make it easier. It's anybody's guess. I really don't know. I can read it both ways. I can see that it might cause people to not cooperate. I think it might cause people to cooperate. So we'll see. It's a good question, Fred. The question is, what do you think? Cartier says, Judge Joe Brown called down a hurricane of his base constitutional opinion applied to all Trump cases today on the Patrick Bet-David podcast. Then he gave a dissertation on the deep state. It was some of the best podcasting outside of you, of course, I've seen in a long time. Well worth a watch. So I think Patrick Bet-David and that crew over there, they do great work, man. It's a great podcast. So if you're not following them, I'd recommend it. Their channel's growing like crazy. And yeah, I'll have to check that out. Judge Joe Brown. They do good work, man. They host a nice show over there. It's a lot of fun. We got Dolphin Fan is the man bringing in five new members. What's up, Dolphin? Thank you, Dolphin. 5 new members coming in. Guess who it is? Steve Clark. What about me? We got Karen O. We got Nunya Bitness is coming in here, along with Deanna G. All courtesy of Dolphin is the man bringing in the members in the house. Thank you, Dolphin. We got Carolyn Wilson became a supporter. Welcome aboard, Carol. And hey, to our new YouTube members, if you want to join us for the members only after party, you can do that. Grab the Telegram link from the community tab section on YouTube. You're gonna have to scroll down a little bit. I'll post a new link at some point. But grab the Telegram link. That's where the after party is taking place. And then Carolyn and our new members, courtesy of Dolphin Fan, we'll see you tomorrow for the morning stream and then on Saturday for the Saturday show as well. We got Rose for Life is joining us on the locals. Says, is Weissman on Chicken Noodle Network? I thought they went out of business. I think that was on MSNBC. He's usually on that network. I think that's where he was. But Chicken Noodle Network, they're still in business, I think, for whatever reason. The Blind Lawyer Explains says the Supreme Court just did ethics. Why? News went, did the same thing. From The Blind Lawyer Explains. Yeah, I saw the Supreme Court, I think, came out with a new ethical code that they've all signed to that's really non-binding. It's, kind of a PR thing, but that's good, I think. John McGarvey's here. What's up, John? Says, sup. What's up, John? Sup to you, my friend. John, been a membo for a long time. Thank you for being a membo. Thank you for the 777 dono. Lucky sevens in the house. Jackpot. Glenn Croy is here. Glenn, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Glenn. Gypsy's here. Ernie C. Ann S. 24/7 Live. AZ Skies. And Andy G. All coming in courtesy of Glenn Croy. Glenn, thank you for bringing in the membos and for being a membo yourself, and welcome aboard to our new membos. We got Me Angelini says, sorry for the earlier defeatist comments. Is anyone else feeling sad? I thought the masses would have eventually seen through this BS. Any advice to keep the chin up and hold on to hope is welcome. Well, Me Angelini, this is a long game, my friend. So I know sometimes it feels like we're a little, we're maybe in a trough a little bit, right? We're in this epoch of time where it feels like things are getting worse, because in many ways they are. But from my perspective, it does require some real kind of real change before people will shift out of their normal stupor. And so from my perspective, it's not necessarily that we're going to be able to save everybody, right? Like the country's going to go the way the country's going to go. But what we can do is really make sure that we're putting our mask on for ourselves and putting the mask on for the people that we love and care about, and doing stuff that we can do to insulate ourselves from some of the madness that's going on elsewhere in the rest of the world. Because the world is going to change, right? And if we're standing there thinking that we can change the world, it's kind of like, I don't want to be defeatist either, but there are some people that they want to live that way. Like that's how they're going to live. And that's okay. They can live that way. But there will be, I think, a partition, and there will be a segment of people that live more in alignment with free principles, and others who live more in alignment with government principles. And so this is a slow bifurcation that's taking place. And so sometimes I feel a little bit defeated or defeatist because I see the rest of the world kind of crumbling around, but then I realize, we can't be responsible for all of those people. A lot of those people want to live that way. And so if we can maybe close the hula hoop a little bit, narrow the scope and just kind of focus a little bit. I know it sounds selfish, but a little more inwardly rather than outwardly, I think that freedom will ultimately prevail. We have the universe on our side. We have God on our side. We've got a lot of very powerful forces on our side. So we got to just keep plugging through and keep our energy up. And sometimes that means, we can't save everybody. Like, we're not going to be able to save everybody. There's a lot of people who will, double down on all of the government's advice. And that's okay for them. But we can, I think, help ourselves. And one way to do that is by, staying connected to a community, one day at a time, just keeping one foot going in front of the other, making small little bites of progress in daily affairs, and then those add up big time. It compounds over the years. And I think that we're going through something right now, and there will be a big contingent of the population that is waking up right now, that is going to join us as we persevere. So keep coming back, right? Keep hanging out with us, and I think that we'll be all right. We are going to win on this thing. It's going to take some time. We've got a long road ahead, but keep your head up, my friend, and keep coming back. We got John McGarvey's in the house. We got Zach Nichols is in the house. What's up? Zach Nichols is clipping for us. John McGarvey, 16 months, man. Whew. Says, time flies when you're having fun, man. It's good to see you, John. Thanks for being a member for 16 months. We're almost to 2 babies in the house. And it's just amazing to have you, John. John is very helpful around the community. Thank you, John, for being an amazing member. Glenn Croy, a member for 7 months, man. We're almost 2 months away from a baby on that one. And so about to pop, Glenn. Glenn, another great member. And thanks, Glenn, for inviting in some new members in the house. We got this one from Mike Sanchez. Hey, what, Mike? Welcome, Mike, as supporter. We're glad to have you. And we'll see you on the after party and the members only morning stream. Pookie's Ma says, Tish's monologue was terrible. Felt like it was her first time even reading. She definitely doesn't have a future in acting. It wasn't even written well. It's like, what was she talking about? Like, she was just mad that Trump was going through a slideshow? Like, that's all it was? Good to see you, Pookie's Ma. We got it. I love it. Flash River says, I find it intriguing that the defense consistently emphasizes the U.S. constitutional rights of their defendant, recognizing it as the paramount law of the nation. However, it's puzzling that the prosecution and judge frequently rely on case law opinions, which, while significant, do not hold the same status as the Constitution, the ultimate governing law of the land. Good comment from Flash. Right, the Supremacy Clause. The Constitution is the base layer. All of these, like, local rules, okay, like, it was a local rule. The First Amendment versus a local D.C. rule. Judge Chutkan's like, oh, clearly the D.C. rule. What? No thanks. This one from Glenn. Glenn bringing in 5 new members. What's up, Glenn? Thank you again. Marie Elena S. in the house. Aging Cynics joining us. Jay Thomas coming in. Charles Schwartz is here. Varank Gaming is coming in. All thanks to Glenn Croy bringing in 5 new members. We got Knox Bierman on the locals. Says, civilization has been here many, many times before in history. I'm sure lots of Romans were pretty angry as well. And you're right about this, Knox. So I'm working on a whole separate project I can't wait to share with you guys. But there's this one concept that I'm excited about putting it together a lecture on, which is called the 4 futures. And it's this idea that history in many ways is cyclical. And it ties together 4 different concepts from 4 different authors that all have books that are on this topic. One's called The Network State by Balaji Srinivasan. He talks about history in reverse. One is called Pendulum by Roy H. Williams. He talks about the cycle of the me and the cycle of the we, going from different epochs in civilization where we're focused on community versus focusing on individuality. We also talk about The Fourth Turning, written by Neil Strauss and Howe, and they talk about how we're in this crisis phase of the fourth turning, and that's probably going to last between now and I calculated it out at about 2033 might be the climax of kind of the fourth turning and the crisis stage before we end. 2023 is kind of the start, plus 10 years will get you to 20, I think I said it, I forget how I calculated it, 2033 and then 2043. There's kind of a 20-year window where we might be going through some pretty precarious stuff. And then the fourth book is Ray Dalio, or the Force Concept is called Principles of a Changing World Order, and he talks about the 6-stage cycle, the rise and fall of empires. So it's cyclical, okay? And when we understand that, we don't have to be emotionally connected to it, okay? If we just say, like, this is just how society is going. Like, we're not losing, we're not being defeated, okay? We're not like bad people and our side is like dying. This is the cycle of history in many ways. And if you study it, right, and then we can, I think, come out the other end better. We can actually thrive in that environment. And while the rest of the world, you know, is masking themselves up and doing the things that they do, we are going to be able to be freer because their capacity to incarcerate us into their lifestyle is going to diminish. The state action, the state capacity to keep us contained as little tax cattle is going to slowly evaporate. As it is, like they can't even keep freeways open and stuff. Like, it's pathetic. So it's cyclical. Like, we're not bad. We're not losing. Free speech and knowledge creation that is empowered by free speech is literally built into the fabric of the universe. And you can read David Deutsch about that, because he'll explain that knowledge is part of the fabric of reality, essentially. And so the people who are pro-knowledge, the people who are pro-free speech, the people who want to facilitate conversations and contribute to the enlightenment of humanity are literally in alignment with the structure of the universe. The people who are not are not. The people who want to silence you and censor you and take away your self-autonomy and take away your freedom because they are harvesting your energy for their own gain, they are out of alignment with the universe. Okay, and they're out of alignment with the spiritual nature of the existence of reality. That's why they will lose. And that's why this cycle goes on and on again. And we're going to win at the end of the day. So, all right, that was an interesting question and conversation. Let's see what's happening over on the X platform. And whether we got anybody joining us here, we do. We got 11 viewers, baby. Woo-hoo! Things are getting pretty serious there over on the X. And let's see who's here. We got 10 viewers over there. 11. We got Vientikis. We got Old Drill Sergeant. Polly's in the house. Jarbot. Chappaquiddick Drinker. And some others. Okay, so V is getting us started. Says, when things get worse, you can hide from it. You can prepare for it. Or you can suck it up and try to make things better. Ask yourself, who do you want to be? That's right. What can you do? Like, the only option is to improve and become more resilient and anti-fragile. Love it. V says, all these people that once would have been in mental hospitals are now working in the government. V says, I also started making my own kombucha. Still learning the process, but I used some Field of Greens in a couple batches. I'm just going to say you're welcome for the idea. Kombucha. I think I tried that one time and I thought I was eating poison or something. I'm not sure. Fred says 234 years of U.S. presidents, 46 of them, and Schiff knows none of them have ever said those words. Yeah, none of them, not even Trump. At the same time, only 27 members have only ever been censured, and Shifty was one of them. Drill sergeants here, Fred here. Polly says, is there any way to see exactly what time a document was created on a computer? I bet anything that Fannie had that emergency motion drafted before the leak came. Good question. Yeah, I don't know. George says, did the team cut the complaint given by Elise Stefanik into a shorter video? I can't seem to find it. Maybe I'm just missing it. I was waiting for that one to share around. It's such a powerful overview of all the judges' misconduct and bias. So thankful for watching the watchers. Yeah, we should have that. It might have been titled a little bit differently. So look at the title that says, it starts with Trump. But yeah, it should be up there. It's like the Elise was the back half of that segment. But yeah, it should be there. Right? We should have it. Jarbot says 73 viewers on Twitter. Woo! That's pretty cool. Samantha says, I heard earlier on what the next person in power should do that I thought was pretty good. Defund the DOJ, putting the money back into the states, put all feds through a rehiring process and re-vet them, making it true law and order. We got Chappaquiddick Drinkers over there. Says, it's a clown show. Rob, Donald Trump was indicted for wanting to investigate elections. Jarbot here says, this is how they did the same thing with Russiagate and Flynn. Just wait for the FBI to exploit a narrative, intel leaks, and then wait for the defense to run out of money. We got That D Guy is there and some others on the X platform, my friends, and it's very nice to see you on the X, of course. You can follow us over there at Rob Govea ESQ. We also have our Watching the Watchers group on the X, and I think they're rolling out some new features for this. Woo, we got 700 membos, man, so this is growing. And we still don't really know like what Elon is wanting to do with this, but it exists. So come check it out on the X platform and join the rest of the Watcher fam. Now, my friends, we are going to wrap it up. We're going to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com to do a members-only debrief. We would love to see you over there. Before we wrap it up, Rocky Waters in the house says, Rob, great show once again. I'll keep it short. I hit every green light but one on my way to work this morning. It was awesome. I felt unstoppable. I kind of felt like Chief from the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's all I got. Thanks for what you do. Hey, thanks, Rocky Water. Man, I know that feeling. You know, 9 out of 10 green lights is pretty good. It's a pretty good ratio there. And unfortunately, I've never seen the film. So, yeah. So I haven't seen that one. So thank you, Rocky Water, for that one. well, I'm sure I'll learn more about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But I'm glad you were feeling powerful. You are powerful, man. Hopefully tomorrow you get all 10 of the green lights. Thank you, Rocky. All right, so my friends, we are going over to Locals, which is where that came from, for a debrief. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is the place to go. You can also check out our website, robertgovea.com, where you can sign up for our daily newsletter, get access to the mind map, check out all the PDFs that we talked about. We publish them all right there, so be sure you add that to your bookmarks and check it out. Before we wrap up, want to say what's up and thank you to the mods and the meme smith who mod down the fort for us. Our friend Viantikis Prime, modding down the forts. K-Bean, Just Cause. We got Playin Hooky, Ronnie Cole. We got Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, our friend John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, all modding the fort down for us. We also want to say what's up to Gigum Gigum, our meme smith, Nathan NA10, and Sleepy Dog Lee. But that, my friends, is it for us on this beautiful Tuesday. We covered a lot of good ground, and the week is just warming up. And so we will be back here tomorrow to get into it all again. And we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.